There are no lights on gloomy roadways. These were the thoughts Jake Harris was having as he was traveling down the lonesome country road. He was leaving a gloomy location that wasn't actual. No matter how quickly he was traveling, he couldn't escape it because it was in his past. It's risky to feel guilty. He had been eating it for a few years, therefore he was leaving the major metropolis by car. He required some alone time. It turned out that Wisconsin was a great pick for him. Jake's late parents owned a cabin in the woods up north. He wanted to get away for a few days, therefore he was going that way. He began to feel sleepy, and he struggled to focus on the road. He had been on the road for a long time. The act of driving was another thing he enjoyed. His preferred route was a long one. He had been traveling a lot ever since his wife and son passed away. Jake occasionally did little more than jump in the car and drive off. The road had poor lighting. After all, it was a rural road that hadn't undergone rehabilitation since 1980. Now, in 2005, the weather and the heavy truck traffic had already deteriorated its state. Now, due to the condition of the road, the trucks made every effort to avoid it. There were numerous broken lights, but no one bothered to fix them. The road and anything by the side required Jake to pay close attention. He didn't want a chance running over a wild boar or a deer. He arrived at a forest. He slightly depressed the gas pedal in the belief that I must be nearby. Jake noticed one of the light poles after navigating a risky bend. A petrol station is about a mile down the road, according to a notice that was right behind the light post. The instrument panel caught his attention. It demonstrated that the tank still has some gas in it. He saw that the light wasn't functioning properly when he cast a glance back at the sign. It continued dimming, then brightening once more. Jake couldn't recall ever seeing anything like that before, therefore it was a weird occurrence. In the darkness, something drew his attention close by. There appeared to be a person standing there. He briefly believed that he saw two circular red eyes, or were they red lights, in the distance. He slowed down a little, but was unable to see further, so he continued to drive. When he was aligned with the sign, his car's front lights began to flicker uncontrollably. Even for a brief moment, they were gone. Until he passed the sign, his radio flipped between channels erratically. About 30 yards later, everything resumed as usual. He was startled out of his slumber by this unexpected occurrence. Jake pondered the possibility that his battery was malfunctioning. Both events could be explained by bad wiring and interference, but the fact that they occurred at the same moment seemed strange. There was very little probability that such a coincidence would occur. He sped up some more to get to the petrol station as fast as possible and thought, "God, I'm tired." He will resume his journey after a brief period of relaxation. Perhaps having a cup of coffee would be wise. There might be a vending machine there, Jake thought. It will be okay to carry on if the unusual incidents don't keep happening. The worn-out man kept scanning the area to see if he could discover anything peculiar in the gaps between the trees. Nothing unusual could be seen in his field of vision. Everywhere he turned, all he saw were oak and maple trees. The road was flanked on all sides by lush foliage. He was uncomfortable in the dark areas. When navigating those areas where the lights were out, he had to proceed more slowly and carefully. He saw the petrol station coming into view. It wasn't a vast space, but it was beautifully lit. A metallic roof that was supported by an ancient steel framework covered the front of the station, where the pumps had been installed. At one of the petrol stations, he pulled over his red 1993 BMW and filled the tank. Another vehicle was parked at another petrol station. Only 4 of them could be counted. Through the windows, Jake could see a woman and a young girl when he peeked inside. They appeared to be unsure about what to buy as they looked around. He took another glance around, but nothing was there. He couldn't see too far out in the dark because of how brilliant the lights were all over the place. He felt nervous after what he had earlier witnessed. Was it his imagination, or was it a shadow with an odd shape? He exited the vehicle and opened the leather jacket's zipper. The area was a little breezy. The weather was gradually turning colder each day since autumn had already come. His legs had a difficult time moving. His joints felt heavy and rusty because he had been sitting for a long time. Jake wasn't too old, he was only 44 and was still in excellent health for a man of his age. His facial scruff had already developed into a beard. Since a few days ago, he hadn't shaved. His sunken cheekbones and droopy eyes revealed his weariness and history of excessive drinking. Once the tank was full, he entered the station and purchased a coffee from the vending machine. He listened to the soothing music that was playing in the background as he waited for the clerk. He knew it had to be a radio, but he couldn't see it. A few seconds later, the petrol station employee approached the counter. He was a tall, black man who was also rather frail. The man appeared somewhat bored rather than at all worn out. His big brown eyes and large lips were traits of African Americans. Before Jake could leave after paying for the petrol, a tense man barged in. He had a huge beer belly and was in his 50s. He was wearing a sweat-soaked, grimy blue baseball cap. His chest, covered with hair, was heaving. The man was wearing a striped shirt that was just partially buttoned, and Jake could see that.
"Hey! Something's out there!"
he said, barely catching his breath. The big man began while he was huffing and puffing. "There's something out there. I saw..." "What's out there?" asked Jake with furrowed brows. I don't know, but it looked like a man." "So what?" asked the clerk. "Maybe it was a man." "Yeah, but he was black." "No shit. I'm black too, man." "No, not like that. He was completely black." "I'm completely black too." "No, not like that. Maybe you just saw a hobo. Or maybe your ass is just high on some grass." Jake and the clerk both laughed. Funny guy, thought Jake, but the genuine distress on the fat man's face was still unsettling him. "You don't understand," shouted the fat guy again. "It was black as tar. I couldn't see anything else. No details, no nothing. Except the eyes, they were red. I think." "Where have you seen it?" "About 1 mile from here, that way," he said and pointed with a puffy finger, "near the road. I saw it too. I don't know what the two of you saw, but I ain't seen shit all night. So with all due respect, please stop talking crazy stuff. You're scaring the lady and her little daughter." He indicated the mother and child. They were not far away. The brunette woman had a good appearance, long, curly hair, and a good body. Her daughter, who had dark hair as well, was listening as she spoke. The young girl appeared to be around 10 years old. "Look, man, I think that what we've seen was just a trick." "No, it wasn't. I saw it moving and the lights of my car went out. I barely got here, man. Couldn't see a damn thing. Come on, man. Cut the bullshit. We all are trying to get through the night, so please calm your ass down." Just after the clerk finished the sentence, the lights on the road went out. They all threw concerned looks toward the road. "See what I mean? Are you people satisfied now?" the fat man said, hoping for an acknowledgement. "Oh, come on," said the clerk. "Damn lights weren't repaired in 100 years. Damn it. Then I'm out of here. Whatever the thing was, it's coming," the big man said, turned, and headed for the front door after seeing the lights go out. "Hey," said Jake, "was it beside the big road sign?" "Sort of. It was farther down the road by a light post, but not far away from the sign. The light wasn't on, it was probably not working. Anyway, I'm not sticking around much." "It crept the fuck out of me," said the fat guy and rushed out. "The guy's crazy," said Jake, but deep inside he knew that the other man was right. "Yeah, man. But haven't you said that you've seen it too?" "I don't know what I've seen," said Jake and turned to go. This annoyed Jake. There might have been something there after all if one more person reported seeing the weird apparition. He didn't see it clearly and refrained from making any inferences. It might just be a local kid's practical joke. He recalled a tale from his teenage years that was uncannily similar to what he had seen previously. He once carved a cardboard piece into the shape of an evil visage with a handful of his mates. They then folded it into a cylinder-like shape. After that, they adhered one cardboard piece to the bottom and one to the top. In the end, it resembled a jack-o'-lantern. They drilled a hole in its back, placed a candle inside, and then fastened it to a tree in their hometown's park. Unseen by anyone, a little boy and girl arrived to have some fun. They became terrified as soon as they seen it and fled yelling. Jake grinned at the idea since he could still see their terrified faces. It certainly resembled one of those practical jokes. The woman wanted to pay when a girl and she arrived at the counter. The mother and her toddler grinned as they both turned to face Jake. He followed suit and moved towards the door. "You don't deserve it," he thought, "so don't even consider it." He was struck by the tiny girl's face. She reminded him of Clark, his late son. The girl resembled Clark in every way: her cheekbones, her nose, and the expression in her eyes. She was lovely, and her eyes were also grinning. Her grin brought up some unpleasant recollections. Jake despised these memories as much as he despised himself because they went back 4 years. Because of him, his wife and son are no longer with him. He felt guilty, and the only way to get rid of that remorse was to die. He was unable to begin a new life after their passing. When he wasn't working, the road was his haven. Jake was in the driver's seat so he could escape the dreaded bottle. While driving, he couldn't drown himself in alcohol. Even if his life didn't matter much to him, he didn't want to kill anyone else. In order to die at least somewhat at peace, he occasionally had fantasies about saving someone else at the expense of his own life. When Jake left via the front entrance, he observed the big man leaving the station in his car. He was operating a rusted-out pickup. Jake pondered how it had survived a century intact and had not collapsed. The man was making few hesitations. He must have applied tremendous gas pressure since he quickly off the road. The obese man sped off in his rundown excuse for a car with no lights, and he vanished into the trees. But he didn't get very far. Following the sound of squealing tires, Jake then heard a thunderous crash. Immediately after the smashing sound, there came a sharp metallic noise followed by a protracted scream. Because of the dense jungle encircling the station, Jake was unable to see anything, but he knew it was horrible. He quickly dashed back inside. "Hey," he shouted to the clerk, "I think the big guy just had an accident." "I'm coming right away," said the clerk and grabbed a flashlight. He then followed Jake outside as he fled. The mother and child didn't leave the house. The mom was concerned that her daughter would witness anything that might cause an accident. Jake arrived at the big man's vehicle. The man appeared to be attempting to dodge something in the road that he realized too late. The vehicle was smoking by the side of the road after colliding with a large tree. The driver was not visible as the two men appeared inside the vehicle. The bleeding steering wheel was immediately apparent to them. It probably didn't even have an airbag because the vehicle was ancient. In spite of having one, it was blatantly ineffective. The right-hand door wasn't where it should have been, they noted. It was laying approximately 5 yards away, between the trees, with its hinges torn off. The impact didn't look so forceful for the door to be that far away. Even for a wreck of a car like that pickup truck, it appeared impossible. "What the hell happened here?" asked Jake and threw his hands in the air. "I dunno," man, ain't no sign of the fat dude. They examined the area around and underneath the automobile. Even after looking around, the men were unable to find anything. Jake was tossing and turning within. He was reminded by the image of the shape with the red eyes. It would have been okay if he had been the only one to witness it. The fact that the big person had seen something as well, and even closer to the station, was extremely unsettling. What if it made it to the station? Maybe a hint that it was nearby was the road lights going out. "It's a mess, man," said the clerk, looking confused. "Yeah, but where the hell did he go?" "Yo, I don't know, but let's not just stand here. I'm gonna call emergency." "That's a good idea, because I heard a scream in that door. Something took him." "Yeah, man. Something big," said the clerk, and his eyes were open wide in amazement, "but I ain't gonna wait here to see it." "All right, let's get back inside." The men were heading back towards the station, but right before turning from the main road onto the driveway, they met the woman and her daughter. "Hey, what are you doing?" "It's not safe here," said Jake, but saw that both of them were trembling. "Mister, the lights went out," said the girl and pointed towards the building. "Yeah," continued the woman, "we thought it was strange, so we came outside. We didn't feel safe inside." "We heard something," said Clara. "Yeah," continued her mother, "there were sounds coming from the back." "All right," said Jake, "let's get back first, then we'll see." All of them returned to the station. The females were behind him, Jake was at the back, and the cashier was in front with a torch. He briefly turned around and started to move backward. He continued to look down the road but was unable to see anything. Nothing was moving on the silvery road because the night was calm. Since his arrival, no cars had passed. It truly appeared to be an abandoned road. He questioned why the petrol station's proprietor hadn't declared bankruptcy. The owner must have made very little money here, it seemed certain. As Jake turned, he noticed that his eyes were drawn to the woman's hips. He enjoyed the way they moved. She highlighted her curves by donning tight jeans. Her upper torso was covered by a thin jacket made of a material that appeared to be leather. Jake thought again, a beautiful woman, before turning his head away in disgust. He started fantasizing about a woman while people were dying, which made me dislike him. Primitive instincts usually prevail in the end, he reasoned. "My name is Curtis, by the way," said the clerk without turning. "I'm Jenna," said the woman, "and this is my daughter, Clara." Not the best circumstances to make friends, huh? Definitely not. "I'm Jake, nice to meet you." "I'm gonna check the breaker panel out back," said Curtis. "All right, Curtis. I'm staying here with the ladies." While Curtis circled the structure, Jake stayed with Jenna and Clara. The young child was giving her mother a bear hug. Jenna was maintaining a watchful touch on Clara's shoulder. Jake knelt down in front of the girl and gave her a consoling smile. She returned the smile. "How old are you, Clara?" "I'm 10, she replied in an uncertain voice. "Well, Clara, me and Curtis are going to find out what is happening and then..." He couldn't finish because there was a loud curse coming from behind the building. Motherfucker, it was Curtis. "Stay here," said Jake. "Don't drive away because we don't know what's out there." Curtis was motionless and had a vacant look on his face when Jake chased him down. He noticed what alarmed the cashier when he turned towards the breaker panel. The panel and adjacent wall were coated in blood and brain matter. Near the panel, the overweight man's body was lying on the ground. Half of his skull and his face were missing. Now they knew why the station's lights were off. The creature that dragged the man here after snatching him from his pickup truck also damaged the breaker panel by smashing his bloodied head into it. "What the hell?" asked Jake. He couldn't say anything else. "This is why we got no electricity. panel's broken. I'm Callan 911. Jake and Curtis ran back to the girls. They could see right away that something was wrong. What's wrong? Asked Clara, and she drew closer to Jenna. Nothing, said Curtis, but neither Jenna nor Clara believed him. Come inside, said Jake as calmly as possible. Wait, said Jenna, what happened back there? Just let's go inside, please, said Jake with an increasing frustration. The girls obeyed, and after they entered, they saw Curtis frantically buttoning his phone. Could somebody please tell me what is wrong? Jake instantly informed her about the body after grabbing her by the hand and yanking her away from Clara. She screamed in terror but made an effort to stifle it with her hand. Clara won't be involved in much of the solution, Jake assured her, but they will try to contact the appropriate authorities. It was crucial to protect the young girl since he didn't want her to experience trauma at such a young age. Damn, said Curtis, my signal is bad. Let me try the landline. He picked up the phone and waited after dialing 911. The cue was picked up by someone before going dead. After a few more tries, it began to work once again. The cue didn't immediately go dead, allowing him to talk briefly before it abruptly did so once more. Did it work? Asked Jenna. I dunno. I talked to an operator, but I'm not sure she could hear me right. Let's hope they received at least where we are. So, said Jenna, now what? Wait, said Jake. For what? We can't even be sure if help is on its way or not. Because the thing that did, Jake began, then realized it as a mistake and stopped mid-sentence. What thing? Asked Clara with a growing distress. Nothing, honey. Could you please help Curtis find what he is looking for? Yeah, sure, said Clara and went behind the counter where the clerk was searching for flashlights and other useful stuff. Sorry for scaring your daughter, but going away is risky. We don't know what's out there. Then why is waiting here a better option? That thing could be anywhere, even inside. Yeah, I know, but I saw the fat guy drive away and now he is dead, alright? Looks like we don't have a right option, isn't it? No, not really. The only sure thing is that being outside is deadly. Also, there has to be something with the lights. Yo, what do you mean? Asked Curtis, who overheard some of the discussion. The road outside is not well lit, Jake began. Yeah, Curtis cut in. Damn politicians ain't wanna fix shit here. Yes, I know. The thing is, when the fat guy left, his lights weren't working. Yeah, he told us, man. I remember now, but what's your point? What's with the lights? Asked Jenna, throwing suspicious looks at the men. He also said that his lights went out when he saw something on the roadside. I saw it too, and when I got close to it, my lights went downright crazy. Like in horror movies? Asked Curtis. I don't like horror movies, said Clara, trying to interfere with the adults, but she wasn't successful. Something like that, yeah. And that thing, it was not human. Are you listening to yourselves? Jenna shouted in irritation. Really? Horror movies? Monsters? You two must have smoked something. Come with me, said Jake and extended his hand toward her. Excuse me, she asked, not understanding what the man wanted. Just come with me, he repeated and tried to sound as reassuring as possible. I'll show you something. I won't hurt you, don't worry. All right, she said to Jake but ignored his hand. Watch my daughter, she said to Curtis and pointed to Clara. Yes, ma'am, no problem, he said, continued his rummaging. Clara helped him. Curtis handed a torch to Jake, who then led the way outside. He was aware that it was a terrible idea, but he felt compelled to explain their predicament to Jenna. Along with the deceased man, they returned to the location of the breaker panel. What the fuck? Said Jake and stopped in his tracks. What? What's wrong? There should have been a dead body here, he said and pointed his light towards the floor and then the destroyed panel. Oh, my God, said Jenna and her hands jumped to her mouth. The bloodstains were still there. Bits of brain were still plastered to the panel. It looked like something bashed the poor man's head against the panel with substantial force. Oh, my God. What is that? Shouted Jenna in fright. Looks like a tongue, said Jake and stared for a second at the fat man's tongue, which lay in a small puddle of blood a few yards from the panel. Jake observed that the blood staining on the ground extended into the woods. He illuminated the area where the body had once been, then followed the bloody streak until it vanished into the shadows of the trees. That thing dragged the body into the woods, said Jenna, and shivered. Yeah, but why? I don't know. Maybe to eat it? Maybe. I don't know, but why leave it here first, and take it away later? Jake froze after his light beam fell on something he didn't see before. He gasped and Jenna threw a half-frightened, half-worried look at him. What's that? She asked and went closer to him in order to see what made the man stare so dumbfounded at the ground. A name was written on the ground there on the bleeding drag marks and decades-old asphalt. Jake's eyes were so amazing. He realized that tonight's events are not random the instant he noticed the bleeding name on the ground. They relate to him in some way. He was thinking about the ramifications when Jenna intervened. Clark? Who the hell is Clark? He was my son. Was? He died, said Jake, and his voice was almost stuck in his throat. I'm sorry, said Jenna, and put a hand on Jake's shoulder. Yeah, thanks. Let's get back to... A loud scream interrupted him. It was Clara. It couldn't have been anybody else. Oh no, Clara, shouted Jenna and ran back towards the front of the station. Jake followed. A stream of light was illuminating the driveway from inside. It looked like somebody was searching for something. Mommy, screamed Clara and ran out through the front door, then hugged her mother. It's all right, honey. I'm here. What happened? A monster wanted to take me. Curtis chased it away, she said, but couldn't control herself anymore and cried. Hey, y'all need to get inside, said Curtis, who was standing in front of the entrance. They followed the clerk's instructions and hurried in. He was trembling from head to toe. His chest was heaving and the flashlight in his right hand was shaking. What happened? Asked Jenna while still hugging her daughter. Curtis added, she said, you know, she said she wanted some candy. I then led her to look for chocolates. She started to wander, and I suddenly heard a scream. She was at the large front glass wall as I ran over to her. I lit her up and then noticed the object you were referring to behind her. Jenna appeared to be having a heart attack as she clutched her hands to her chest. Clara's continued existence made her happy, but she was also aware of how close her daughter's life had been to being taken. And what happened next? Asked Jake, who could speak. Jenna was still shaking. It disappeared. It dissolved into thin air. I can't explain it, and I couldn't see much. It was big, man. The light, said Jenna after waking up from her stupor, the light made it go away. Like you said before. Will the monster come back, Mommy? Asked Clara, still with tears in her eyes. I don't know, honey. All I know is that we will not let it hurt you, all right? The young child simply nodded before tucking her head under her mother's shirt. She resisted letting her go. What sort of mother wouldn't want to defend her daughter, as Jenna genuinely desired to do? The issue was that she was unable to. The two men, who were also lost, had to be her support system. Yeah, concluded Jake, it doesn't like the light. That's why it took out the breaker panel, and that's why it could scare the fat guy. His lights were not working. Yo, the fat dude said his lights went out when he passed the thing on the road. You passed it too, but your lights are working, right? Yeah, I think so. When I passed the thing the first time, my lights flickered and my radio went nuts. It all returned to normal after I got farther down the road. How come that your lights were still working? Jenna asked. I don't have the vaguest idea. Your lights were okay when you were on the road? Yes, but I came from the opposite direction. Okay, replied Jake. We don't know what the hell this thing is, so we better make sure that we are surrounded by light all the time. How many flashlights do we have? We have 4, said Curtis and pointed to the counter. One is mine, the other is yours, and we still have 2 extra. One of the lights was taken by Jake and given to Jenna. She accepted it and gave him a sympathetic glance. Also offers some optimism. She thought Jake was a man who might help her and Clara. She didn't think Curtis was any less capable, but she recognized Jake. She wasn't certain of what it was. She might have noticed in his eyes that he would act quickly to save them. Hey, Curtis, said Jake, have you seen anything unusual here lately? Anything which might explain all this? Yo, I'm working here for a month or so and I'm sure as hell ain't seen any crazy shit going on around here until your weird ass showed up tonight. Jake lowered his head. He was thinking. Maybe these events are truly tied to him somehow, but he couldn't understand how. I don't know, Curtis. Let's just get through the night, okay? Let's do it, man. Hopefully, our batteries are gonna last. Aren't you selling flashlights here? Asked Jenna, perplexed. No, ma'am. This was the same question I asked the boss when coming here to work. He said that he plans to sell them in the future, but not yet. Business strategies, you know. Or the lack of them, Jenna cut in. Shit. Jake exclaimed after their flashlights went out. They were surrounded by darkness and felt frigid fingers scurry up their backs. Clara gave her mother a tighter embrace. The 2 men made frantic attempts to restart the lights, but in vain. They heard sirens just as they believed it would be over. A police cruiser soon arrived on the driveway with flashing red and blue lights. The passengers inside the station exhaled in contentment. They were saved at last, and the horror was ended. At least, this was their belief. Or, to put it another way, they all wanted this to be true. The car's siren and lights abruptly shut off, preventing it from getting too close. A couple more times the driver attempted to start the engine, but he was unsuccessful. The radio wasn't working either when he tried it. Jake unlocked the front door and started to leave to meet the policeman when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He noticed movement between the tall shrubs to his right. He initially believed it to be the wind, although it had an unusual shape. Onto the driveway stepped a tall, black figure. It was entirely black, with no discernible features other than an outline. Although it was pitch black outside, visibility was still good due to an unclouded sky. The dim moonlight provided some illumination for the area. There was nothing else save it. Even though there were no functioning lights, the creature's utter darkness was nevertheless noticeable. It appeared to be 8 or 9 feet tall, with wings. They were retracted, and they resembled bat wings only considerably bigger. Additionally, the creature had 2 horns that protruded from its forehead and twisted upwards. Jake was unable to make out any facial details. It had lengthy hands that culminated in slender fingers and sharp claws. The creature's legs were digitigrade, with lengthy fingers and claws, like those of a bird or a bat. The eyes were the sole thing that protruded from the darkness. Positioned in front of the face, they are round and red like human faces. They had the cruiser in their line of sight. Jake instructed the others to remain inside as he started to warn the police to be on the lookout. He was shouting and wildly flailing both hands. He was aware that doing this was the stupidest thing he could possibly have done, but he didn't want to offend any more people. For him, his son and wife were enough. "Watch out! To your left," he bellowed and pointed to his right. Already heading in the direction of the car was the thing. Both front doors were slammed open, indicating that everyone within saw Jake signaling and the looming danger. The moment the door opened, the dark object made a huge leap and landed next to the car, preventing the driver from exiting. At this point, Jenna grabbed her daughter and ran to the station's back. She didn't want her to see any of the impending events. What the fuck, came the panicked shout from the police officer as the creature grabbed the door and ripped it off like it was nothing. A female police rushed out of the car on the passenger side, screamed in fright, and fell on her butt. The driver, her co-worker, managed to get his sidearm out and started shooting. It made no difference because the object was not even flinching when the gunshots passed through it. Given that there was just approximately 6 feet between the shooter and the monster, Jake reasoned that the shots couldn't have been off target. Jake watched in awe as the black creature grabbed hold of the police officer, dragged him out of the vehicle, and then spread its wings with a horrifying cry. It was an incredible sight. The creature had wings that could spread out for at least 10 yards, if not more. The policeman was still conscious and yelling, but he was unable to stop the winged blackness. It leaped into the air, then increased its height with a powerful wing flap. Then, with each succeeding flap, it moved farther and farther away until it and its prey vanished into the darkness of the night sky. "Come here." "Hey, officer." Jake was trying to get the attention of the policewoman who was still lying on the ground. Jake could see terror in her eyes as she turned to face him. Jake approached her and reasoned that perhaps she was shocked. He was accurate. The officer's expression was bewildered and lost. Her eyes exhibited fear. She didn't awaken from her coma until Jake extended his arm and repeated his calls to her. "Come with me," he said. "It's not safe here." All right," she replied, but could barely speak. He helped her get inside the station. When Jake opened the front door, a beam of light hit his face, and he had to wince. "What's that?" he said and put his hand in front of his face. The other one was around the waist of the shocked woman. "Sorry," said Curtis while fiddling with a flashlight. "Looks like the flashlights are working again." "What the hell was that thing, man? I can't believe this shit." "Me neither, but I don't know what it was. It looked like a bat straight out of hell." "Are we going to survive this night?" asked Jenna and glanced questioningly at Jake, after emerging with Clara by the hand. He simply sighed since he was at a loss for words. He wasn't at all sure if they would survive after seeing the frightening skills of whatever the winged thing was. He knew in his heart that they cannot flee or attempt to combat this beast. Jake set these ideas aside since he needed to act. His heart broke as he saw the young girl crying and the expression on her mother's face. "We have to do something, man," said Curtis in a desperate voice. "Yeah, I know. I'm thinking," replied Jake. "All we know so far is that its weakness is light, and it can interfere with electronics," said Jenna, trying to begin a train of thought. "Yo, that's right. The problem is that we need electronics to have lights," continued Curtis. "I sure ain't starting no campfire here." "Okay," Jenna replied, "but what about a generator? Don't you have some kind of backup generator for emergencies?" "I don't know. As I said, I'm working here for a month, and they didn't show me much when I started." There is a generator," said the policewoman in a shaking voice. Without saying a word, the others simply stared at her as if she were some kind of extraterrestrial. They almost lost sight of her altogether. She wasn't quite 30 but was still young. Her long blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and her normally straight features were suddenly distorted by shock and anxiety. She had her head down, her hands on her knees, and her back on the counter as she sat on the floor. "Sorry, ma'am," said Jay cautiously. "Are you sure?" Yes, my name is Sarah and my brother used to work here. He had told me he had to use the generator once because of a power outage. And do you know where it might be? 'Cause I'm damn sure I ain't seen it round here. Somewhere in the back. I don't know. It might be in the equipment room. Go check. Alright, I'm gonna check it out. I'll come with you, said Jake, and gestured toward the back with his hand. Can you take care of the girls? Jake began, but Sarah interrupted him. Yes, of course. I think I'm okay now. Just go. The two men sprinted outside while using torches to guide them. To the back, where they had discovered the overweight guy's body, Curtis was escorting Jake. There were restrooms and a small area for various tools and equipment in this location. Curtis fumbled a little with the key, but soon the door opened, and they were greeted by a dirty and cluttered, rectangular room. The smell of dust and gasoline hit their nose right away. Let's see what we have here, said Curtis and began searching. Jake joined him. After a few minutes, they found it. It was a small, portable generator. It worked on gasoline and it wasn't the thing they were hoping to find, but it was better than nothing. I have to find some gas to fill this baby up, then we'll see if it's working or not, said Curtis and began searching for a canister of gas. I really hope it's gonna work, said Jake and sighed. Yeah, we'll see about that, said Curtis and continued his search. Look at this, man. A searchlight. We could use this baby. Yeah, damn right, said Jake and inspected the object, which was larger than a flashlight, and had a long cable attached to it. Their flashlights made erratic flickering motions before going out. The lights turned back on after 3 loud shouts came from the front. The sounds frightened them both, and Curtis dashed for the door with the swiftness of a panther. No, said Jake, stay here and get this thing going. We'll need light as soon as possible. All right, man. Go! Curtis replied, and his hands were already shaking. Jake sprinted to the front to investigate the incident. He nearly yelled himself when he arrived at the door and turned to face the glass wall. A man's upper torso was creeping in his direction, his eyes glued to Jake. Without knowing what to do, Sarah was standing in the doorway. Jenna didn't witness these terrible occurrences since she was inside, cradling her daughter. Jake didn't know what to do as the disfigured body crept closer to him. He was the captured police officer, or more precisely, the other half of him, and he was easily identifiable by his uniform. His initial instinct was to assist the man, but something told him that this wasn't as things should be. A man crawling for who knows how far after being severed in two is abnormal. In these circumstances, the shock and blood loss must be extreme. He recalled something he had seen when he was younger. He learned from it that he should never experiment with speed restrictions. A young man was racing furiously on his new motorbike years ago. It was his birthday, so his parents simply gave him the bike. The rider lost control of the motorbike, slammed into the side of a car and slammed head-on into a pole. His body had been divided in two. For a few seconds, the adrenaline kept the poor bastard alive. He made an effort to scurry to his lower body and return it there. All of the patient's internal organs were on the ground as the paramedics hoisted him up. When Jake crawled to retrieve his guts, he saw his eyes, and they were unlike the eyes of this man. These were vile and unyielding. When the crawling torso spoke in a voice that was nearly feminine, his fears were confirmed. "Why did you let us die?" he spoke, and the others cringed at the sound of the strange voice. Jake backed up a few steps with his mouth hanging open. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "It's your fault, Jake. It's all your fault," the torso on the ground said, and then his head fell onto the ground. Then he didn't move anymore. Jake continued to stare at the body before turning to face Sarah, who was still at the doorway. Her expressions were confused and terrified. She turned to Jake because she was certain he had the answers. At least, this is what she deduced from her observation of his expression, which revealed a range of emotions. "Hey," she said and extended her hand, "come inside." Jake was unable to speak. Old emotions came flooding back to him. The floodgates were now wide open. He was once more hit by that which had been only slowly seeping through recently repaired fissures, dousing him in a rain of grief. As he fell to the ground, he covered his face with his hands. Sarah rushed up to the sad guy, knelt down by his side, and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Come on. Don't do this. We need you." I killed them," muttered Jake with the blank stare still on his face. "You didn't kill anybody," shouted Sarah, and shook him hard. "Now come inside, will ya?" The man emerged from his coma and stood up. He was taken back into the station by Sarah. His legs hardly followed his commands. His thoughts were elsewhere, in a shadowy realm. Sarah and Jenna questioned Jake after she had brought him inside again. "What was that?" asked Jenna. "How could that man still be alive?" "I don't know." "He wasn't," said Jake, and his voice was strong-minded now. "What do you mean?" asked Sarah. "He couldn't have been alive. It was just some sick game played on us by that wing thing." "And what about the voice?" "That voice was not him, I tell you." "But whose voice was it?" "Don't tell me that this voice has something to do." "Yes, it has. It was my wife's voice, almost." "Your wife?" asked Sarah, and her expression betrayed utter bewilderment. "Yes, she died 4 years ago along with my son, Clark." "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that," said Sarah, "but I don't understand what has that got to do with what's happening tonight." "I don't either, believe me," said Jake and headed towards the liquor section. "So what's the story?" asked Jenna. "Well, the fucked up story is," began Jake and opened a bottle of Jack, then took a hearty swig out of it, "that I was married and had a son. He was 10 years old. He looked very much like your daughter, Clara." "What happened to him?" asked Clara, who was silent until now but was beside her mother all the time. "Our relationship wasn't that good, you know. So I sought some fun elsewhere, if you know what I mean." "Yeah, you cheated on her." "Yes, that's correct," he said, adding that there isn't a single day on the face of the planet when he doesn't regret doing that. He then took another sip from the bottle. "We ultimately had the inevitable arguments after she found out, after which she filed for divorce. She was given custody after our divorce, but at least I got to visit my son." "And what happened then?" "One night they went to their grandmother's. It was a night like this. They were driving on an abandoned country road. She was tired and found herself face to face with a truck. She couldn't avoid it." "Oh, my God." "I'm sorry," said Sarah. "Yeah, me too. Every damn day." The weird thing is that Clark was found with almost all of his head missing several yards away in the forest. Some wild animal dragged him from the wreck. His voice faltered. He felt a knot in his throat. "Just like the body of the first victim," said Jenna. "Was there a first victim?" asked Sarah. "Yes," replied Jenna, "in the back." "And what about the next one?" "When emergency services found my wife, only her upper half was left in one piece. The engine was pushed forward, and it crushed everything from her waist down." "I see now," said Sarah. "And you think that these events have something to do with that?" "Definitely. I don't know how, but they are related. If I hadn't cheated on her, they could still be alive." "It wasn't your fault," said Sarah. "Cheating on her wasn't an agreeable thing, but their death wasn't your fault." "Yeah, my mind keeps telling me that, but what is burning in here," and he put one hand to his chest, "is telling me otherwise." "Hey," said Jenna, "where is Curtis?" "Damn it, I left him in the back," said Jake and began running to the back. "Stay here." The door to the equipment room was ajar when he arrived, but Curtis was nowhere to be found. The reflector and generator had been dragged up to the entrance. He appeared to be attempting to move it forward when something unexpected happened. "Damn it," he shouted and began searching the surroundings for Curtis. He didn't want to lose Curtis, thus his heart was beating rapidly. He didn't want to lose anyone, in fact. He wanted to make sure they were all alive, but it didn't appear to be possible. Without receiving a response, Jake kept calling Curtis. He was met only by the weird sounds of the night. There was a constant chirping of crickets in the jungle. An owl hooted from deep into the forest. The sign of death, he briefly considered. Is he destined for this? Only anguish and sorrow following one small error? He believed that he didn't deserve this. At least not this much. Because he made a mistake once, other people shouldn't have to pay with their lives. Having had no success in finding Curtis, he took the generator and the searchlight and took them to the front. When he reached the front door, the women already knew that Curtis was gone. "Did you find him?" asked Sarah. "No, there's not a single sign of him." "Oh, no," whimpered Jenna. "Are we going to die one by one?" "Mommy, I don't want to die," cried Clara. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it," Jenna said. "Mommy is just scared, that's all. We'll figure something out soon, and we'll go home." "All right?" "We really have to do something," said Sarah, "because this thing is going to kill us all. I don't want to scare anybody, but we have to get out of here." "Yeah, I agree," said Jake. "But what the hell can we do? We don't know where that thing is, and we don't know how we can stop it." "Let's start the generator, so we have some light," said Sarah, "and then we wait until morning." "I have no better idea." "All right," replied Jake, "I'll try to start it." He moved the generator deeper inside before turning it on. It was performing well. The searchlight and generator were then attached. After turning it on, the area was bathed in brilliant light. Their flashlights were no match for it in terms of power. The sound of the generator's engine steadily roaring was enjoyable. "Great, it's working," exclaimed Jenna with some newfound hope in her voice. "Yeah, let's hope the gas is going to last," said Sarah. "Okay, now what?" asked Jenna. "Now we wait," said Jake and took another gulp of whiskey. "We still have a few hours until sunrise." They all sat together and waited close to one another. The illumination was soothing. Jake periodically checked the petrol level in the generator. Although the machine was consistently consuming gas, it appeared that it would operate till dawn. Nothing occurred for around an hour. Jenna was sound asleep while Clara slept in her mother's arms. Jake and Sarah were both awake. They occasionally drank from the bottle. They won't become drunk if there isn't too much. They were discussing a variety of topics in a low voice. Clara woke up and started rousing her mother after a few uncomfortable steps. "Mommy, I need to pee," she said, and Jenna woke up from her uneasy sleep. "Yeah, all right. I need to pee too." "You two shouldn't go alone," said Sarah. "Don't worry," said Jake, "I'll go with them." "I'm coming too. I also have to use the bathroom and it's better if we all go together." "Damn whiskey, I shouldn't drink on the job." "All right. Let's try to make it quick. We take the flashlights with us. At least we'll know when it comes." They took the flashlights and switched them on. They were working fine. The trip to the back of the station was uneventful. After all of them finished what they had to do, Jake started leading them back inside. Then the interior light vanished, and they could hear some clattering noises. Once more, the flashlights began to flicker, signaling an unnatural or unpleasant event. Jake overheard Sarah heaving as she removed the holster from her sidearm. They were positioned at the building's corner. "What do we do now?" asked Sarah while gripping the gun with trembling hands. I don't want to die, cried Clara. Don't worry, Mommy is here. Let's check, said Jake. The winged creature couldn't have done it. It hates the light. The entrance was just a few feet away as they all shuffled their way around the bend. Due to the fact that she had the firearm, Sarah was now in charge. They took a quick look inside and noticed that nothing was moving. The absence of a working light was the only thing that seemed strange. Sarah entered after opening the door. Jenna and Clara followed, and then Jake. They waited and listened for a short while. Everything was still, nothing was moving. Jake moved slowly in the direction of the broken generator on the ground. It appeared as though somebody hit it with a sledgehammer and broke it into pieces. On the ground, there was a large puddle of petrol. "Who's there?" shouted Sarah and held her weapon in front of her. "What?" asked Jake in a startled voice. "Something moved there," she said and pointed to the back of the place, between the shelves. "Wait," said Jake and walked toward her. They heard a slight stirring in the back, but the darkness completely obscured their vision. Petrol spillage left a strong odor in the air. They had to take care not to unintentionally ignite it by doing something foolish. Jake and Sarah moved cautiously in the direction of the back. At this point, they heard the outside sound of hefty wings flapping. They both turned to face the glass wall, but were unable to see anything. They were already hidden between the shelves, and it was also dark. Once more, the outside was the source of the flapping. Sarah's hands were trembling and the gun she was holding was rattling. Clara and Jenna backed away from the front wall. Jake then overheard Sarah screaming. When he turned around, he noticed something grabbing her. As a black figure bit into her neck, she screamed once more. When Jake went in to assist her, he realized the black figure was Curtis. But was he? It hissed and raised its head. Sarah was bleeding profusely from her neck. It went right for the head. Jake immediately understood what that had meant. She might have had a minute or less to survive. Jake hit Curtis in the face after grabbing the hand that was holding Sarah's neck. Curtis backed away and relaxed his hold. Sarah slid out, turned, and fired twice with her remaining strength. Curtis lurched back as a result of the bullet striking their victim in the chest. He tripped and slammed his back on a shelf before falling onto his butt. The wounds didn't have any bleeding. "You're all gonna die," Curtis growled. "Curtis, what's wrong with you?" asked Jake, but knew that he isn't talking to Curtis. "You let me die. Just like you let the police officer die. Just like you let the fat man die. Just like you let..." "Shut up," shouted Jake, but Curtis just laughed. "What are you saying to your demons when they won't stop talking?" "Jake, your demons are awake, and they won't stop until you're gone. Do you not see? Your fault is everything. You miserable crap, just fuck die for the good of everyone." Curtis stopped moving as his head began to droop. Jake was staring at him with disbelief. The unfortunate thing was that he trusted Curtis. Jake was finally able to understand what these experiences meant. He turned to face Sarah, who was lying on the ground and clutching at her neck wound. He ripped a piece of his shirt off swiftly, folded it, and applied it to the wound. He was determined not to let Sarah die. She didn't deserve it. The only one who deserved to die was him. Jenna came to his side. Clara stood a few feet behind them. "Oh, my God. Is she going to make it?" Jenna asked. "I don't know," said Jake, and held pressure on the wound. "What happened to Curtis? Why did he attack Sarah?" "I don't know. Somehow that creature can control people after they die. I can't believe this." "Me neither, but I have to end it." Sarah gasped, and she grabbed Jake by the sleeve of his jacket. "Save them," she said, but barely had the strength for it. "I won't make it." Save them, please. No! You won't die. You can't die. It made no difference because Sarah was already veering off. She stopped breathing after a few seconds. Because of how large the wound was on her neck, blood still leaked out. Jake was indignant and distraught. Is he truly to blame for all this? How is that possible? All of this as a result of a past mistake? Sarah's sidearm was removed from her lifeless hand, and it was examined. It was a revolver, still loaded with 4 rounds. He replaced the 2 missing rounds after searching her pockets for more. He turned to see Jenna first, then her daughter. He believed that these 2 would survive the ordeal. To save them, he will do all action within his ability. What are you going to do? Asked Jenna. I'm going to end it, said Jake without hesitation. The gasoline which had flown out of the generator gave him an idea. He walked up to a shelf and took some duct tape. Jake also looked for potential matches, and he did so quickly. They were affordable, and there was a large supply. Then he left and went to a pump. He quickly looked around before grabbing one of the hoses and spraying petrol everywhere but the entryway. So that the gas might flow without him holding the hose, he taped the lever to the handle. He threw the object to the ground before approaching Jenna. That thing will come, eventually. I think that it wants to finish what it started. And what are you going to do? Asked Jenna with tears in her eyes. I prepared a surprise for it, said Jake and pointed towards the flowing gas. When it comes, you 2 run as fast as you can. And what about you? Till I'm gone, that thing won't cease. Before it harms you or your daughter, I have to face it. I can't be certain that, even if I kill myself, it won't turn me into a monster as Curtis did. I need to confirm that everything has vanished. All right, she said, but she was crying now. I wish I had a choice, but this seems like the only one. Get your daughter and be ready. But where should we run? Away from the monster. If you have to run through the woods, do it. Don't hesitate. Again, wings began to flap. Jake prepared the rifle and the matches as he braced himself at the petrol pumps. The thing descended onto the roof of the structure. They heard its footsteps moving along the roof after it let out a frightening howl. Be ready, whispered Jake to the girls. They did little more than wait by the entrance while nodding. The animal was moving slowly. The actions appeared deliberate and calculated. Jake's heart felt like it was going to burst through his chest. The girls were afraid but desperate to go immediately. The creature jumped down from the building beside the girls. They both screamed and ran. When the creature wanted to dart after them, Jake pointed the pistol at it and began firing. Hey! Here I am. Come and take me, you ugly bastard. With its fiery eyes, the monster turned and glared at Jake. Jake finally realized what had happened at this point. It wasn't just that he was involved, he was the entire thing. He experienced all the sorrow and suffering he had endured since his wife and son had away. He had been invited by the beast. Because of this, when he arrived, his lights were still functional. It was teasing Jake and feeding off of his remorse. Jake couldn't imagine how this could happen, but it did, and it resulted in more deaths. He continued to shoot, but the monster was unharmed. It became nearer and nearer. Jake looked back after saving the final round for himself. Clara and Jenna had already left the house. Jake pulled up the matches and lighted one as the beast drew near. You're coming to hell with me, he shouted, and when it got closer, he threw the match at its feet. The gas lit up with an infernal roar. The creature cried in pain as the light and fire hurt it. When the fire reached Jake's legs and began engulfing him, he put the pistol to his head and pulled the trigger. Jenna and Clara watched as the subterranean petrol containers blew up in a spectacular blaze of light and heat a little while later from the road. Their ears also picked up the creature's cries. They witnessed the fiery body of the creature emerge from the flames and vanish into thin air in a matter of seconds.